I'm the one of not done. Is that gonna be, it has something like you gonna, I don't know, like it just I'm just nervous. I don't
No,
want to hurt the dog, and I don't want the dog hurt me. So just a but.
No, you cannot. So the whole point of learning all of this is to understand that you cannot, that every single time we do something, the dog either respond to that or react to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that's the whole point of studying this module is actually getting familiar with the behavior of the dog, understanding that the behavior of the dog is always reaction to the outside stimulus, like ours as well, right?
Yeah.
Sada mogu da počnem da pričam na srpskom jeziku koliko god hoću i vi me nećete razumeti, ne zato što ne pričam istinu, nego zato što ne razumete srpski jezik. I šta god ja sada da kažem, vi uopšte nećete imati pojma o čemu ja govorim, ali tako? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
What did I said?
You speak Spanish.
Did you understand did you understood what I said?
You speak too quickly. Could you just repeat one more time?
Yeah, mogu. Znači, bez obzira što ne pričam na jeziku koji razumete, ako ono što pričam
I'm
neće...
so sorry. Yeah, I think you speak Spanish, right?
Sorry?
Like,
If you're speaking Spanish.
No, it's not Spanish. Do you understand Spanish?
no, I don't.
Yeah, of course. It's not Spanish, it's Serbian, but it's kind of like no matter which language I would talk, you don't understand either of those languages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how much I stimulate you with my voice and with my talking and with the words, you cannot respond because you don't have enough brain cells to process the information I'm giving to you.
Oh.
And if I would keep talking to you more and more and long an entire class, if I would perform this class in Serbian, you might end up angry at me. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because the level of the frustration would be so high that you don't know how to react. And then you enter, and when the stress reaches a highest potential and a level that's unbearable, then we end up either withdrawing and you said, okay, I'm going to go from class, or you're going to attack me and start fight with me. But that doesn't come because you don't hear me or you don't see me talk. It comes from that my stimulus that I produce, that I stimulate your brain to kind of decode what I'm telling, so you'll be able to understand. And since you never learned the language, you don't have a developed control centers in the brain to decode the voice and the sound that you hear into understandable phrases and then to respond properly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly how it comes when we try to have a dog's behavior, to get something from the dog and not be able to communicate with their language and understanding what we want from them actually, right? So there, the whole point is to try to find a way to communicate with the dog, because if the dog is scared of bathing or of any process of the grooming, what you are actually doing is exposing that dog constantly to a threat. You're just actually more and more making that dog anxious towards the process, because that dog is in survival mode. And that's why it was important so much to look at the how can I say that? To look at the Pavlov experiment and the little Albert experiment, because you remember that the little Albert experiment was all around the fear. Did you watch the little Albert experiment? Right? So the baby was conditioned to become afraid of the little mouse and the whatever objects, right? That usually the baby had completely indifferent relationship toward, or it was very interested in those objects, or kind of, because it was not only animals and pets and things like that, so he used a lot of different things, right? But when he started to introduce the how you say that, the sound, then the baby starting to developing a fear of loud noises that is actually primordial fear of the humans. And then that primordial fears reflected and was how you say that was which word I'm missing?
Associated.
Yeah, it became associated with the objects that the baby loved. So now suddenly the baby becomes fearful of the objects that the baby usually loved. And that's exactly what we do with the dogs. So often it's not only what matters, it's not only what we do to the dog and the way we do it. It also what matters is a context in which we are doing it. Because everything is actually can be trigger to a dog's response. So the dog is not stubborn or is not spoiled or is not oftentimes when we try to have a temperament of the breed like this and that. What the dog is to raise to be reactive or responsive to a certain stimulus. So if the dog is already having established reaction towards the stimulus, you cannot work within the same stimuli environment with the dog trying to change its behavior. You need to start building in the dogs before entering into because yes, you are right. You can either hurt yourself or the dog can hurt you. So those either or idea. What are you doing there?
You put your camera so you're facing the TikTok.
Ma, it's okay. So what we want to understand here is actually that when we work with the dog and dog does not cooperate, you are not against the dog. You're against the dog's brain. And once the dog is in mode of reaction, there is no way that you can do anything else. So today we had a wonderful experience in a shop. So there was a lady that bought a dog that was usually very good at the table. So we assigned the dog to some students, and the students, started to working with dog, and suddenly the dog started to be responsive. The dog didn't want to stay, didn't want to let them touch the face, nothing. Okay, so what we did, I said, okay, put the dog back in a kennel so the dog can rest, and then assigned another student to that particular dog, and other students was able to do it with no problem. So now how one student was able to do this using the same protocol and the other student was not able to do it using the same protocol? What do you think was a problem? What do you think might be a problem in that? They are the same quality student. They have the same technique, same approach. Everything is the same. What do you think might be a problem when the one student was able to do it, the other one was not? What do you think?
So the first one cannot do that, but the second one
was able to do it, yes. And I'm asking you why. What do you think?
I think because the dog already calmed down, and also maybe the second one they can like maybe let the dog feel calm with the second one.
What did you can you just repeat? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Feel what?
Like you mean like kind of comfortable with the second one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and then he learned from the first one what going on. So this time he tried to calm down and try to cooperate with the rumor better. I think that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it might be. So the problem was in the difference in between two of these students today was talking to a dog.
Mm.
One student was talking to a dog, not talking to a dog, I'm sorry, was talking to its colleague.
Oh.
And they were talking next to that dog. And while talking to a dog, they maybe, I don't know, I don't know the content of the talk that they had, but usually it's why we love always to work in silence. So that's where these two girls broke the protocol, and the next one that took the dog actually was very quiet And she was also working because our students are working in assistance, like every single time you have a students and the younger students, so they work together, right? But they are very specifically instructed not to talk in front of the dog, in between themselves. So don't talk while you are grooming. Why is that important? What do you think? Why talking to one another is important when you groom dogs? What do you think?
Maybe because there's a different sound and the dog couldn't understanding him or him
Actually,
fear.
no, actually it's the contrast. It's the opposite. Because what happens when we are talking in front of the dog and we are professional groomers, that's why multi-station grooming shops with a lot of dogs next to each other and a lot of groomers next to each other and a song playing in behind and the talking, people talking and things like that. It's never a good environment for the dogs because particularly in this context when we were talking about this particular dog in question, because when talking to one another, you might start using words that the dog can connect with something that was happening at home, that's happening at home. So you don't know the home situation. Maybe when using a certain words, the people are actually fighting among each other, or someone is abusive in the family at home. An outcome of that is maybe someone went sometime and kicked the dog. So you don't know what was going on and which kind of words are associated with which kind of emotional charge in the dog. And that's why always the best recommendation is if you are working in the stationary places, try not to interact with your colleagues when you have a dogs on the table. The best way, the best calm, the calm environment is only environment in which you are alone in a room with the dog. So when you're alone in a room with the dog, or you have someone also in a room with your dog, but there is no other dogs, no other tables. It's only one-on-one session on one dog on two people. One is assistant, the other one is helping. Not to talk and not to interact, because the words are acting as a trigger. And I had another suggestion on my TikTok, almost went viral. But last time when I talked about that, it went viral. When I said, like, please do not. There you go as well. Like we had like one input is in between. They said like a people, the dog need to know that the people that the dog is fully present. That's also, and that's why you never talk to anyone when you have a dog on the table. That's true. That's literally true. But it's also on the other hand is oftentimes, even if you are present and talking either to a dog or to your colleague while working, you are triggering a dog's nervous system and maybe triggering and initiating responses. That's why you are not talking to dogs. And the best suggestion I sometimes had, even when working with the clients with the reactive dogs, to change the name of the dog or don't call the dog by its name, because oftentimes the name of the dog is the most emotionally charged word that you can use in communicating with dogs. Because sometimes at home, the dog would be punished next to the name when the name is said loud, or the dog gonna be praised when the name is said. For example, I come home from my work and the dog is jumping all over me and I have a cookie and I have, good Henny, thank you so much. Were you missing me? My baby, my Henny, I love you, baby. Come here. Henny, Henny, come here to me. I'm gonna give you a treat. So kind of like try to develop a nice association to his name, right? And the same afternoon, the dog pees on the couch, right? And then I get mad at him and I said, Henny, what the fuck you did here? Get your ass here, right? So you're using a name again, charging it with a negative emotion. So calling a dog by the name and giving him a positive reaction and outcome of something else would be using the same name with a negative charge. Now the dog doesn't know if you say their name, which of those two is coming, and that helps dog develop this disorganized attachment And disorganized attachment can lead into avoiding the relationship with the humans, other humans, or actually becoming anxious that leads to aggression. And why? Just because you use the name you use the word within two different contexts without dog knowing how to associate it. So sometimes the word on its own is so messed up that's better to change the name of the dog than to try to work reverse engineer and then use the word name of the dog just for the good association. So that is where the very important stance stays, as the importance, everything happens. We are not behaving because we want to behave that way. When we start feeling angry, when we start feeling sad, when we start feeling anxious, it's already a lot of biomechanical process of the hormones and everything else that happens inside the body. It's at stake and already pushes body to behave. So we cannot confront our emotions at the moment when emotions are triggered to be released or showed. You cannot control the anger when the anger is already triggered. If you're going to control the anger, meaning anger need to be suppressed. But in order to transmute the energy of the anger, you need to act much, much before anger actually happens in the environment in which anger is very easily pulled out from us. I would have to say, I would have so much to discuss with you, but my English is not very good. I love what you do. Thank you. Voila. Thank you so much too. We can use AI and communicate lately with how do we communicate with all of this. So that's very interesting. So the idea of this learning curve for every single one of us is to understand that for the behavior of the dog and the grooming environment of the dog, we need to prepare all six senses of the dog much prior the dog enters our shop. And when you have a dog that's already reactive within the environment of the grooming, you don't groom that dog. You need to rehabilitate the program. You need to reprogram the mind of the dog, right? And that can be done only through persistence and through learning. And that's why the learning is very important. Can you tell me what is the difference in between learning and for example, in between teaching and training? What is a result? What is the difference in between teaching someone something and training someone something?
The teaching ones is just you just say and you tell everything about the knowledge you have for them. And the training is like you gonna show them once a baby step one in you learn in hand, like in hand together, like so the details you can do one by one to learn it. That's a training.
Okay.
Yeah.
So training and teaching are two different concepts of interacting, learning how to, or actually trying to find a way to interact with the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So if we train the dog, outcome of training is obedience. So I'm gonna train my dog so they're gonna obey to me. They're gonna do what and when I tell them to do, right? So I'm going to tell them to sit and come and go and stay and whatever, attack or don't attack or be good and quiet, things like that. And everything of that is enforced by outside force. So the stimulus of the object. So here we have a subject. Subject is a dog, and we want to influence the dog's behavior. So now we are the stimulus of the dog, and we might use a stimulus with the two same stimuluses at the same time. I'm gonna tell them sit down, and then I'm gonna show them what to do, or I'm gonna inspire one to do. And outcome of that, what they do, gonna be either punishment if they don't do it with a prong collar or shock collar or whatever, like all right, or it's gonna be a reward when they are doing it. But anyhow, in the training obedience connection, so that the object is training the subject, and the object is a stimulus to a subject. Object influences the subject, and subject does not have a chance to do differently than to obey. Outcome of training is obedience. An outcome of teaching is the learning. So the teacher teaches and the student learns. The object teaches and influences the student to learn. So, and then the dog as well. So how can I teach the dog something? And that's very importantly defined, and you're going to learn in next module. In next lesson, you're going to have that little booklet called Animal Education. That's a doctor's dissertation of the Watson. He wrote that on the end of the 19th century. It's called Animal Education, in which we explored the learning curve of the rats. So how do they develop a mass of their brain while solving the puzzle on their own in order to get to reward? So they were not trained. They were just put in a maze, and they were needed to try to find a way, and they had a motive to find a way through the maze in order to get to the food. They were not blackmailed. They were let alone, and then they were able to get through the maze in order to reach the other side. So there was not a reward in a sense of if you do this, you're gonna get, and if you don't do this, you're gonna get, because there was nothing to do, right? They needed to decide to do things in order to benefit from it. So that's when you are put in the environment in which is safe to explore. Then we're gonna learn. Learning happens when the subject, the learner, the student, is free of choice and made a decision on its own based on the self-desirable outcome, not enforced outcome. And then as I learn to solve the problem and puzzle faster, my brain develops. And exactly in that scientific study called Animal Education, the Watson proved that the silver gray mass of the rats that were solving the puzzles on their own were much more, they had much more gray mass in the brain. That's actually is so-called myelin sheets on the neuron that helps impulse through neural cell go faster, much faster, and with every single time faster and faster and faster and faster. So the same problem within exploration tends to be faster and faster solved. But the very big difference in between when we train the dog, then we enforce our expectations on them, and they're gonna either be punished or rewarded if do something well or not perform as we want. So the actually in a training, subject does not have a free will. In a teaching learning curve, there is a free will. I want to do it or I don't want to do it. If I'm inspired enough, I'm gonna learn it, and I'm gonna bear the fruits of the rewards because I want to do that. And then the teacher sets an environment and stage in which the subject or the learner, the student or the dog or whoever, feel safe enough to explore and not to make a mistake, just to go sidetracked and not get the result of its doing. So next time they're gonna track, but they're not either punished neither rewarded for the outcome of their doings. And that's always need to be. And later on, what he actually learned and what he actually studied is actually that every single next generation of the mouses is solving the puzzle much faster. Not only that they are going through the maze when there is the food on the other side, but they are going through the maze, solving the puzzle on their own, making fun out of it. So reward on its own does not necessarily need to wait on the other side. And that's where we learned about this. Training is always leaving a trauma on the brain of the subject. So what kind of trauma? Sit down, and if you pair like a kind of like don't do that, and you're or sit down and then pull the prong collar or shock the dog if he doesn't perform. So the educated trainer, they know exactly when to strike, when to touch, when to do. So the dog can immediately get association. Aha, I do this when do that, and then it hurts, so I won't do it anymore. But by definition, trauma is called interrupted movement. So how do we traumatize ourselves? When the environment in which we are, we perceive something, we want to do something, and it was not allowed to us. We didn't have a freedom of choice at the moment, no matter how good intentions were. So that's little trauma by little trauma. Sometime the interrupted movement of the parents when they are buying, for example, let's do like this. A child wants ice cream every day 3 times for the dinner, breakfast, and lunch, and they want a chocolate for the ujinu snack. So that's a movement of the child. So now the parent can have 2 things. In order to teach the child to safely explore, not to prevent child from eating ice cream and everything the child wants, but from a side, giving attention more on a better outcome in any way for the child to get away from and diverse from the ice cream to the apple and then to something that's actually beneficial for the child. And that's kind of like developing a bad habit and then slowly through the learning and inspirational way moving and diverse away from it. If you have, but how would we train? And that's actually learning curve, and the child needs to be inspired to leave old behavior and replace it with the new, because benefits that child gonna experience in the life will be much of if the child gonna take this side of the road. So not eating, let's say, ice cream and chocolates, but let's say eating broccoli and or sweet potato and apple, right? But if the mother always kind of like punishes the child whenever they want to have a chocolate, and when they ever eat an ice cream, or the child screams and everything, and mom says, I don't know what to do, I need to give him ice cream, he's gonna scream entire day, bless you. Then actually what we are doing, we are actually over traumatizing already traumatized child. Because even though the child wants something that's not good for them, it's already in a way in which the child desires something. And if it's going to be pulled away from that end, it's going to leave a mark on the physiology. Still, it can save the life of the child, because if it's not done, the child is going to have a diabetes, let's say, right? So now we need to weigh what's better there to do, right? But the trauma is never justified. And even if the parent need to do that to interrupt the motion of the child that is destructive, need to remember that even that good intention of preventing someone doing destructive something for them will leave a mark, because the brain and the body itself does not don't no difference in between good or bad. Interrupted motion is trauma. Either interrupted to do something good or interrupted to do something bad. That's why we always need to look for us and to pull us away from training into a learning curve in which I am desired, but I cannot do that by myself. I always need a support to learn. That's why the support in the learning curve is very important. So based on who do you let yourself be taught by is of very big importance how great you're going to be in the possibilities to learn. Because learning meaning exploring meaning making mistakes, and taking credit, taking responsibility for them and turning them into something meaningful. But everything needs to be self-induced. So the teacher and the student, or the teacher and the dog that learns, or the parent and the child that are in a relationship of someone that influences someone else has no job rather than to inspire and to provide a safe space to explore a new possibilities of solving and overcoming old obstacles. And we can do that. And in 2 weeks, we're going to learn about how is that done through the pure love and harmony formula, and how do communicate with your dog. How do I make my dog, in the environment in which they can choose? Very easily, because 100% of the dog's environment is created by humans. So the dog live in the human environment. And you know why it's very difficult to observe the dog and make an etiology of the dog, because etiology means observing the dog within its natural habitat. So now what is the difference in between my dog and your dog, and why observing, why you can write a book about your dog and your dogs that you trained or you taught, because you, and if you exclude, that's the etiology of you and the dogs. And if you exclude you and put me on that place, the dogs behave completely different, not because the dogs are different, but because the object that is influenced the dogs is different. So the etiology of the dogs and the environment of the dogs can completely changes. The dog is like electron. Until do not observed, behaves like a wave. Je to dobro? And the moment it observes, pomozi mi, it starts behaving like a particle. So it's like a dog. Until you do not observe them, they behave one way. The moment someone starts looking at them, the dog has intention to blend into its energy and everything else. So when you remove the person around who the dog is interacting, you get completely new dog. For example, we are living now in the house with a dog that was hyper reactive when it's their owner around. And I was thinking, oh my God, how are we gonna live with that dog? Because the dog is really reactive. He was barking at the squirrels, and we have now the chicken and geese and the little ducks, and we have a very nice little farm here at the house. And she's just crazy of all animals. But the moment the owner went into an apartment and she said, like, let me just settle a little bit, so I'm gonna take her a little later. So now the dog lives with us like 2 weeks already. The dog is completely unrecognizable. She does not bark. She does not chase anyone. She doesn't bite us wanting to take anything away from us. And we didn't do nothing. We didn't train her. We just created an environment in which the dog just was looking for their own place. The moment there isn't a structure within the family, and trust me, less you deal with the dog, and less you try to train the dog, and more consciously try to make your environment better for yourself, then next time you're gonna be able to see like a dog behave in completely different way. And what do you think that's it? Because we went over that. What do you think? Where do you think this is? Where do you think this is? How can I say? Where is this coming from? Yeah, introduce me to your dog, and I'll tell you who you are. That's exactly how the dogs are mirroring their owners. But it's also very interestingly to see the moment the owner is not observing the dog or not present, the dog tends to blend and please another human being that's around the people. So where are around them? So where do these come from?
Mm, I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. So where it comes from, it's actually from evolutionary advantage. We were talking about that when the Ray Coppinger was talking about how the dog become a dog and how the wolf turned itself into a dog. And observing dogs, we actually need to know that we are working with wolf puppies in the sheep clothing, right? So when you are awakening and working with the dogs, the dogs are forever puppies. That's why they're behaving like they have a puppy-like behavior, even in old age, no matter how old they are. They always are sweet and cute like a puppies. And that's exactly, there is one phenomena in nature called sneoteny. That means that a species is going to evolve within its environment by maintaining the look of its babies. And by maintaining that look of the baby, the dogs also kept the physiology of the wolf puppies, even in the adulthood. That means that the wolf's puppies are able, like a dogs, are able to blend into any environment at any age, at any time, under any circumstances. And it's called high neuroplasticity. Some dog gonna need like 1 week or 2 weeks, but no dog would need more than 3 weeks if the structured environment is created. And how you can create another environment for the dog? By changing the owner. Like I created a new environment for this puppy that was first groomed by one groomer, and then it didn't work, and I gave it to another groomer, and they were able to do it immediately. So once you change the environment, so change the person, the dog gonna immediately try to blend into the new people environment, right? Or to change the behavior of the object, change the behavior of the owner. Because if we as an owner change our behavior, the dog gonna observe us like a completely new strangers, and they're gonna immediately try to adapt themselves to a new environment that we created. The problem with the human, every single animal on this planet has a tendency and instinct to blend into its environment. The humans are only animals on the planet that are capable of building their own environment. And yet in environment that we build around us, we are completely lost. And unfortunately, we are taking us to, together with us, we are bringing dogs to that lost environment. So as we don't know how to create environment for us, we won't be able to know how to create environment for the dog. But once we start changing the consciousness around that and starting change our behavior, the dog's gonna look at us like a new people, creating a new possibility for interconnection and relationship. And that's the moment when you can get your dog back on track. But before that, you need to get yourself on track. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's answering your question, how to do that. First, you need to build your environment and then welcome dog to it. If you have a dog, you need to reinvent yourself. And then once you reinvent yourself, the dog gonna find its place next to you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you have any questions?
No.
I know I talk a lot, and I'm sorry if I bother you, but you, if you didn't get everything, like please take a notes or watch this recording once again. And then if any question arise, please come back and ask. And that's also for every student that was not here live, but you watched recording. Please get to us with all the comments, questions, and everything that's unclear, or you have your thoughts on it.
There'll be a
All right.
transcript and summary in the Learning Hub.
So in the Learning Hub, you're going to have a transcript and a summary of this video as well, the entire recording of the class. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Happy
you.
rest of the week, and then see you next Monday, or